Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive, where we really get into the knowledge you need. Imagine, a new skyscraper going up or a factory being built. It looks amazing, right? A real marvel. But behind all that, behind every single beam, there's this world of unseen dangers. It's a constant dance with risk. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on construction safety. It's not just rules and regs. It's about the people building our world. It's about progress and, yeah, a stronger economy, too.
That's exactly right. And for our deep dive today, we're drawing on a whole range of sources, articles, detailed research, expert notes. They cover pretty much everything from the most common hazards you'd find on a site, right through to the complex legal stuff and what employers have to do. Our mission really is to pull out the absolute must-know info, find those facts that might surprise you, and help you see why this affects everyone, whether you're actually on a site or just, curious about how things get built safely.
Yeah, and just to hammer home how critical this is, let's kick off with a pretty stark statistic. Our sources are clear. Globally, and specifically in places like Malaysia, construction is consistently right up there at the top for workplace deaths and serious injuries, year after year. Just think about that for a moment. It immediately tells you why we need to talk about safety in this sector. It's not just numbers, it's actual lives.
It really is. And when you look at construction itself, I mean, the nature of the work, it becomes obvious why the risks are so high. These places are dynamic, they're physically tough, often unstable, and they're changing literally day by day. You've got heavy machinery moving around, power tools buzzing, temporary structures like scaffolds, all happening at the same time. Plus, workers are often way up high or maybe in tight, confined spaces, dealing with live electricity, potentially hazardous materials. It's incredibly complex.
And that dynamic nature means the dangers aren't just the obvious ones, like something falling or a structure giving way. Our research points out other hazards, too. Ergonomic risks, for instance, the strain from lifting heavy stuff all day or repetitive movements. Then you've got environmental factors like extreme heat, maybe, or that constant loud noise that can cause real long-term problems. And maybe surprisingly, biological hazards, things you might not immediately think of.
Right, like mold or bacteria.
Exactly. And the fact that many jobs are temporary, often outdoors, just adds another layer of unpredictable risk.
And what's really interesting, perhaps a bit counterintuitive, is how a strong safety culture isn't just about, ticking boxes or avoiding accidents. Our sources strongly suggest it actually drives innovation and project success. When workers feel safe, genuinely looked after, they're more engaged, they're more likely to suggest improvements, and ultimately they build better, faster, and yes, more economically. It flips the whole idea of safety from being just a cost.
To an advantage.
Precisely, a competitive advantage. Beyond preventing tragedy, it keeps projects running smoothly, avoids those expensive delays, boosts productivity because fewer people are off injured. And of course, it enhances the company's reputation
Yeah.
and makes sure they're following the law.
So, with all those risks, when things do go wrong, what are the most common and the most devastating types of accidents? Our sources are very specific here. Falls from height. Tragically, that's the #1 killer in construction. It's a really sobering fact.
Mhm.
Beyond that, you see workers being struck by objects, electrocution is a big one, and then trenches or scaffolds collapsing suddenly. It's a harsh reality.
And the impact just spreads outwards, doesn't it? It's not just the immediate incident. Obviously, there's the terrible loss of life or maybe long-term disability for the worker involved.
Yeah.
But then employers face serious legal trouble, massive fines, projects get delayed, costs spiral. And something often missed, but incredibly important, is the emotional trauma. For the colleagues who saw it happen, for the families, that impact lasts. It really does.
Which brings us neatly to a really major development in the legal side of construction safety, especially relevant if you're operating in Malaysia. That's the OSHA Amendment Act 2022, A1648 as it's known. This wasn't just a minor update. It was designed specifically to significantly boost safety standards in construction and other sectors too.
Yeah, this is a fundamental shift. It really changes the game. Before, certain workplaces might have been exempt based on size or registration status. Not anymore. Under this act, all workplaces are covered by OSHA automatically. And crucially for this discussion, that includes construction sites of every size, no more exemptions based on worker numbers. That's a huge expansion.
And it goes deeper. The Act now says every single employer, no matter how small their operation, has to prepare and actually implement a written safety and health policy. It's not just good practice anymore, it's a legal requirement. It forces that top-down commitment.
And here's where it gets particularly interesting for construction. This idea of shared accountability. Now, contractors and subcontractors, they've always had duties under OSH law, right?
Right.
But now, The clients, the developers, the ones acting as principal employers, they can also be held legally responsible for safety breaches on their projects. Project owners now share that legal accountability with the builders.
Wow.
So, if you're developing a site, you're legally on the hook for safety, even if you're not managing the day-to-day stuff.
That is a massive shift in responsibility. Okay, so what else does the Act bring in? Specific personnel?
Yes, definitely. There are clear requirements now for safety personnel. For example, projects valued over RM 20 million must have a registered safety and health officer, an SHO. Other projects might need an OSH coordinator, depending on the scale and risk involved. Plus, there's a mandatory safety and health committee for high-risk workplaces with 5 or more employees. And importantly, these committees have to include representatives from both the employer and the employees. It encourages collaboration.
And I assume there are teeth to enforce all this.
Oh, absolutely. Stronger enforcement powers for DOSH officers. That's the Department of Occupational Safety and Health. They have more authority now to inspect, investigate, enforce compliance. And the penalties, much, much stiffer. The maximum fine jumped massively from RM 50,000 up to RM 500,000.
Wow, tenfold.
Exactly. And there's a real possibility of imprisonment now for serious breaches, particularly if someone is killed or badly injured.
And it doesn't stop with fines and imprisonment, does it? There's more on liability.
Correct. The Act introduces new offenses and actually extends criminal liability. Company directors, other responsible managers, they can now face criminal charges if they fail to prevent accidents or fail to provide safe working systems. Essentially, employers can be prosecuted for not providing the necessary training or the right PPE personal protective equipment or for skipping proper risk assessments. The accountability is really tightened up.
Okay, so taking a step back, what does all this mean for the construction industry as a whole? What are the big takeaways?
Well, the implications are pretty wide-ranging. Basically, safety can't be an afterthought anymore. It has to be baked into every stage of a project, right from the initial planning, the budgeting, through to the daily work on site. Proper documentation becomes absolutely critical, those written policies, the risk assessments, training records. It's not just nice to have, it's essential proof. And frankly, failing to comply, it means serious legal trouble, huge fines, yes, but also project delays that cost a fortune and real damage to a company's reputation. It's a complete shift in mindset and practice.
Right. Now, let's maybe shift focus a bit to the actual work itself. What happens on a typical construction site? What are the common activities? We're talking things like excavation, right? Digging trenches, foundations, basements.
Which immediately brings risks of collapse to mind.
Exactly. Then there's piling, driving those big columns into the ground for support, and scaffolding, obviously, those temporary platforms for working up high.
And that's just scratching the surface. You've also got electrical installation crews, you've got material handling, lifting, moving, loading heavy stuff, and specialized jobs like welding or painting. The common factor in almost all of these is machinery and equipment. These tools boost productivity, they allow for incredible precision, but they also bring significant hazards if they're not looked after properly or if people aren't trained to use them right. It's that classic double-edged sword.
Totally. Even simple hand tools, hammers, screwdrivers can cause injuries if people aren't careful or if the tools are faulty. Then you have ladders and stairs for getting up high. Seems basic, but they have to be stable, positioned correctly. It's vital. Scaffolds, too, whether fixed or mobile, they need to be put up by trained people, inspected constantly. You can't cut corners there.
No, you really can't. Then there's form work and false work. Those are the temporary molds for concrete. If they're not built right or if they're taken down too soon, they can collapse catastrophically. And finally, all those mobile power tools. Drills, grinders, welding sets, air compressors, portable generators. These are the workhorses used for cutting, drilling, joining, lifting, everything.
And there's another layer of safety regulation here that really underscores the risk with some equipment, isn't there? The Certificate of Fitness.
Yes, the COFIF. For certain high-risk heavy machinery, it's mandatory. It's an inspection and certification process run by DOSH. It basically confirms the machine is structurally sound, it's being maintained properly, and it's actually safe to operate.
So what kind of machines need this COF?
Well, think about the really big stuff. Tower cranes lifting tons of material way up high. Passenger hoists, material hoists, gondolas used for facade work, air compressors, lifts installed on site, those huge piling machines. This certificate isn't just paperwork, it's a critical check to prevent major failures and protect lives.
Okay, let's dive deeper now into the specific types of hazards you find on construction sites. They're really diverse. Starting with physical hazards working at height, we've mentioned it, it's huge. The risk of falling from scaffolds, ladders, unfinished floors,
Hmm.
and the control. Proper fall protection is non-negotiable. Harnesses, guardrails, safety nets.
Then you've got noise. It's almost unavoidable on many sites, from machinery, drilling, banging. Long-term exposure leads to hearing loss, fatigue, which itself is a safety risk. So mandatory hearing protection, noise monitoring programs are key controls. And dust, particulate matter from cutting concrete, mixing cement, it gets everywhere. Causes serious lung diseases like silicosis or asthma. Controls include using water to suppress dust, wearing proper masks, and ensuring good ventilation.
Okay, what about chemical hazards?
Yeah, workers can be exposed to a lot. Paints, adhesives, solvents, even wet cement, which can cause chemical burns. Welding fumes are another big one. These can get into the body through breathing them in, skin contact, sometimes even accidentally swallowing them. The effects range from skin irritation to serious respiratory issues or even long-term organ damage. So safe storage, clear labeling of chemicals, and the right PPE, like specific gloves, goggles, respirators, are absolutely essential.
And biological hazards, you mentioned those earlier. What does that look like on a construction site?
It's often less obvious, especially outdoors or in damp areas. You might find mold or bacteria growing, maybe insect bites or stings, animal droppings on remote sites, or contaminated water in pits. These can lead to infections, allergic reactions, skin problems. Controls here are about good sanitation, wearing gloves, maybe vaccinations for things like tetanus, and just really good personal hygiene practices.
And of course, electrical and mechanical hazards are everywhere.
Absolutely. Electrical risks come from hitting live wires, using faulty equipment, leading to shock, burns, fires. Proper grounding, regular checks, and this critical procedure called lockout, tagout are vital.
Explain lockout, tagout quickly.
Sure. Before anyone works on a machine, its power source is physically locked off, usually with a padlock, and a tag is attached saying "do not operate." This prevents anyone from accidentally turning the power back on while someone's working on it. Simple, but saves lives.
Got it. And mechanical hazards.
That's about the moving parts of machinery blades, belts, gears, things that can cut, crush, or trap someone. The main controls are machine guards to physically block access, clearly visible emergency stop buttons, and really thorough operator training.
And finally, ergonomic hazards. These seem less dramatic maybe, but can be really debilitating.
They definitely can. This is about poor posture, doing the same motion over and over, or lifting heavy things improperly. Think about constantly bending or twisting or carrying heavy loads without help. It leads to musculoskeletal disorders. Back pain is a huge one, and general fatigue, which again increases accident risk. So, training on proper lifting techniques, using mechanical aids like hoists or carts, and rotating jobs can make a big difference. And really, all these different hazards, physical, chemical, biological, electrical, mechanical, ergonomic, they all contribute to those common accidents we listed earlier. Falls, being struck by things, collapses, shocks, and so on.
Okay, so we've got this complex web of hazards, significant legal changes. It really puts the spotlight on the employer, doesn't it? From the site owner down to the main contractor and project managers. How do they actually manage safety day to day? What are their core responsibilities?
Well, the bottom line, legally and ethically, is that employers are responsible for their workers' safety. Full stop. And effective safety management isn't just about avoiding fines. It genuinely prevents accidents. It builds that positive safety culture we talked about. And honestly, it makes the project run better.
So what's the first step? That written policy.
Exactly. That's foundational and now legally required by the OSHA Act. It's more than just a piece of paper. It's the employer's formal commitment. It needs to outline their safety goals, who's responsible for what, and the strategies they'll use. And crucially, it has to be communicated effectively to everyone on site and reviewed regularly to keep it relevant.
And they need people to implement this policy, right? Safety personnel.
Absolutely. Competent people are key. Roles like the Safety and Health Officer, SHO, or Site Safety Supervisor, SSS, are vital for doing inspections, checking compliance day to day. And that Safety and Health Committee in higher risk workplaces, that's crucial for investigating incidents, advising management, and making sure workers have a voice in safety matters.
Okay, policy people. What about identifying the actual risks?
That's risk assessment and hazard identification. It's fundamental. It's a systematic process. Look for hazards, figure out who could be harmed and how badly, check if existing controls are enough, and then put in place any extra measures needed. And, critically, document everything. Those findings need to guide how work is planned and carried out.
And once risks are known, you need procedures to deal with them.
Precisely. Safe work procedures, or SWPs. These are basically step-by-step guides for doing specific tasks safely. Could be for working at height, handling a certain chemical, operating a crane. They need to be clear, easy to understand, specific to the task, developed with input from experienced people, and readily available to the workers doing the job. Think of it as a safety roadmap for each task.
And providing the right gear, PPE.
Yes, employers must provide appropriate PPE. Helmets, gloves, goggles, harnesses, masks, safety boots, whatever the risk assessment dictates. But as our sources really stress, just handing it out isn't enough. You need to ensure it's the right type for the hazard, that it fits properly, that people are trained how to use and maintain it.
Right.
And you need supervision to make sure it's actually being used correctly, and a system for replacing damaged gear. Alongside that, regular safety training is non-negotiable. Site inductions, toolbox talks before shifts, emergency drills, first aid training, keeping safety constantly visible.
And for the really dangerous stuff, there's the permit to work system.
Yes, the PTW. This is a formal, written control for specific high-risk jobs. Think entering a confined space, doing hot work like welding near flammable materials or complex lifting operations. The permit ensures that all the risks have been assessed and all the safety precautions are physically in place before that hazardous work starts. It's a crucial checkpoint to prevent mistakes.
Makes sense. And keeping an eye on things ongoing. Inspections.
Constant vigilance. Regular safety inspections are key. Could be daily walkthroughs by supervisors or more formal, scheduled audits by the safety team. The goal is always to spot unsafe conditions or practices early and get them fixed immediately. And if an accident does happen, a thorough investigation is essential. Not to point fingers, but to find the root causes. Why did it really happen? Gather evidence, analyze it, and put corrective actions in place so it doesn't happen again. Prevention is the aim.
And what about the machinery itself? Keeping it safe.
Preventive maintenance.
Yeah.
Absolutely vital. Scheduled servicing, regular checks, diligent upkeep of all machinery, tools, equipment, cranes, hoists, electrical systems, everything. It stops equipment failing unexpectedly, which prevents accidents. Plus, it reduces downtime, makes equipment last longer, and ensures compliance, especially for those items needing that certificate of fitness.
And finally, just getting the message across. Communication.
Hugely important. Clear, consistent communication is the glue that holds it all together. Safety meetings, bulletins, posters, ideally in languages the workers understand well, and effective signage. The mandatory signs, wear hard hats, warning signs, danger high voltage, prohibition signs, no entry, emergency signs, fire exit this way. They all constantly reinforce the safety rules and contribute to a safety-conscious environment.
Wow. Okay. That was incredibly thorough. A real deep dive into a complex, but let's face it, absolutely vital area. So just to quickly recap the key takeaways, construction is inherently high risk. The legal landscape has shifted significantly with the OSHA Amendment Act 2022. Remember that shared accountability and the much tougher penalties. The range of hazards is incredibly diverse, from the obvious physical stuff to chemical, biological, ergonomic risks. And employers have a massive, comprehensive set of responsibilities to manage these risks and keep people safe. It's clear safety isn't just a department, it's embedded in everything.
Absolutely. It's fundamental to building responsibly, efficiently, and building a better future.
So as we finish up, here's something to maybe mull over. Considering that expanded legal accountability, we talked about the shared responsibility reaching clients and developers. If you were involved in a construction project, maybe not hands-on, but as a developer or a client or even an investor, how does that shift in liability fundamentally change how you'd approach ensuring safety, even if you're not the one wearing the hard hat? What does this really mean for the future of development, where safety seems well and truly tied to every single part of project success, right from the first sketch to the final handover? Something to think about.